19th of next month. So we will have our next speaker coming up here in the same room, February 19th. So look forward to more details about that. But I want to start off with today's presentation with Kristi Mergenthaler, and it's an $8 mountain, the place, the plants, and growing threads. So $8 mountain is an iconic serpentine cone in the Illinois Valley. It's one of the most significant botanical hotspots in southwestern Oregon. Some ultramafic soils support an extraordinary concentration of rare, endemic, state, federally listed plant species, many of which occur nowhere else on Earth, and some are known only to the Illinois Valley itself. This harsh but remarkably biodiverse landscape has long served as a living laboratory for botanists studying endemism, adaptation, and ecological resilience. So today, the $8 mountain faces increasing pressure from renewed nickel mining interest. It's a growing threat not only to the singular landscape, but to serpentine ecosystems throughout Southwest Oregon at this time. Mining activity poses risks to fragile plant communities, hydrology, and long-term ecological integrity, potentially irreversibly altering habitats that took millennia to form. So this presentation is going to explore the botanical significance of $8 mountain, the unique ecological processes that shape serpentine landscapes, and the urgent conservation challenges posed by mineral extraction in one of Oregon's most biologically irreplaceable regions. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Kristi and have her come on up and start the presentation. We're going to learn a lot in the next hour ahead.
Thank you, Matt.
You bet.
Hello, Siskiyou chapter. Hello, Zoomers.
There you go.
Thank you.
Sure.
And Zoomers, please let everyone know if you can't hear me so well. My voice is in recovery from a cold. So I'm here to talk about a spectacular place, $8 Mountain, and the incredible plants that live there. And unfortunately, a new threat to $8 Mountain and serpentine landscapes in Southwest Oregon. This is $8 Mountain. This is from Days Gulch Botanical Area, and that would be my best friend, Acorn, the red dog. I fell in love with serpentine landscapes and their staggering beauty a long time ago. But I think it was 2003. I was in grad school and I was taking an ornithology class, and my project I made up, and I decided I was going to compare the bird life at different fins. And thanks to Molly Morrison from the Nature Conservancy, I was given permission to go to $8 Mountain Preserve. However, prior to visiting it, I had the worst sprain of my ankle in my life. And I've had some pretty bad ones. So I think in 2003, I kind of stumbled my way up to a big fin with cobra lilies, a wetland. And I was exhausted. My life was exhausting at that moment. And I remember just laying down next to the cobra lilies, had my binoculars. I'd watch the birds from my laying down situation, and the bird songs were washing over me. And I felt safe. I felt cocooned in this otherworldly landscape. And that's when I fell in love with $8 Mountain. The Illinois Valley and $8 Mountain are the ancestral lands of the Western Tequilma, who cared for the area and the plants from time immemorial before they were tragically forced to leave and walk to reservations in the Willamette Valley. Beautiful news is they're still here. The ancestors are here. There's still indigenous peoples in our region and in the Illinois Valley. And I was honored to go to a cultural burn led by ancestors of native peoples of this region at Siskiyou Field Institute last spring, and it was beautiful with $8 Mountain in view. Camas, of course, is an important plant for indigenous peoples in Western North America, and $8 Mountain in the wet area supports beautiful abundance of camas. It's told that adjacent indigenous people used to call the Illinois Valley lots of camas place. So it was a place of supporting camas in the valleys that are now developed and $8 Mountain, but also for probably trading camas. So I'm going to talk about where it is, the geology, highlight some of the special plants. By the way, I have like 30 more plants that I wanted to have in this presentation, but I also didn't want us to be here all night. So can't highlight all the special plants of $8 Mountain, but we can highlight some of them. And then the geology and unfortunately the new threat. $8 Mountain is in Josephine County in the Illinois Valley. It is between Selma and Kirby and right off the Redwood Highway, Highway 199. Deer Creek flows along the northern boundary, and the wild and scenic extraordinary Illinois River bounds the southern and western parts. And where Deer Creek and the Illinois River come together, $8 Mountain is a magical place. I hope you all get to go there. I've been there. So management of $8 Mountain, the whole western half is a botanical area managed by the Forest Service. Quite a lot of the eastern half of $8 Mountain is a critical environmental concern managed by the Bureau of Land Management. The state parks has a whole section of 640 acres that they acquired for conservation. On the northeastern section of $8 Mountain is a wonderful place called Siskiyou Field Institute. How many of you have been there? A great place to take workshops, a great place to camp or stay in the yurts or even in the room that John Wayne once stayed in. But Siskiyou Field Institute is protected by a conservation easement held by the Oregon Watershed Enhancement Board. Much of the eastern boundaries and the southern foothills are private lands, and they include 2 preserves now cared for by Southern Oregon Land Conservancy, who I work for. $8 Mountain Preserve, which was transferred by our friends from the Nature Conservancy to SOLC a few years ago, and a brand new preserve called Cobra Lily Springs. So that's the purple bits on this map. And the very low southern part, the orange bit is the Darlingtonia Boardwalk on BLM lands. How many of you have been there that are in this room? Yes. $8 Mountain is a special place. It has kind of a corny Euro-American name. The story is, well, it might have been about some guy who bought $8 boots and wore them out by walking around $8 Mountain, or it could relate to someone who found a gold nugget that was worth $8. Here, I'm gonna, sorry, you guys can't see if I can move these guys. I think I can.
You can click on more if you'd like, Chris.
There.
And you can get one off of that 3 down if you'd like to take out.
Sure.
I can do it for you.
Too complicated.
Yeah.
Thank you, Matt. So this slide is in part to thank all the people, including the indigenous people, who have been caring for this landscape. And the group of people up on the top, the protectors, it's not everybody, but they represent folks who were involved with the last mining threat to $8 Mountain in the 1990s. And some of these folks worked for agencies and helped designate the botanical areas and the ACECs. Some of them documented the special plants. The Nature Conservancy, Darren Borges, had a huge role in protecting the landscape. And Mary Petzel wrote lively letters calling for the protection of the plants and the butterflies of $8 Mountain, and many, many others. And I'm here because of geniuses like Susan Harrison and Dr. Art Krukeberg and countless botanists and ecologists and geologists who have helped us understand this landscape. and I am an imperfect and nervous vessel. So I stole some slides from a presentation I've given before on serpentine ecology. Here's some definitions. So serpentine is sort of a catch-all word that just describes rocks derived from the mantle inside the earth. Serpentinite is the technical word for serpentine rocks. It's the state rock of California. And serpentinite is made up of, to confuse things more, serpentine minerals with fun names like lizardite and chrysotile and tagorite. Ultramafic or ultramafic is another term you'll hear regarding mantle rocks. And that means rocks that are ultra rich in magnesium and iron. And the two classes of rocks are peridotite, which is kind of a catch-all term for rocks that are mantle rocks, that miraculously are on the surface of the earth, and they derive from a magma, and they're igneous rocks. Serpentinite or serpentine is when a mantle rock goes on the journey to the surface of the earth. You add water, you add a little pressure, maybe add some heat, not very much, and they're altered and sexy. Serpentine ecology is the study of these rocks and these soils and the plants and the atmosphere and how they all work together. A couple geology slides. Yes.
How would they transport it to the surface?
We'll talk about that. And again, I'm not a geologist. I did take a lot of geology classes and got a minor plus in geology, but enough to maybe be dangerous. But I know the broad story. Okay. It starts with the Earth. We know the center of the Earth is a metal core. Much of this beautiful planet is mantle. And then the surface is the crests, which are broken up into plates that move. It's a dynamic planet. We've had supercontinents that then have been broken up. Antarctica was moved all the way by itself to the South Pole. We have oceans created and then destroyed. It's a moving, wonderful place to live. And the plates are moving on this structure called the asthenosphere. Where you find serpentine up on the surface of the earth is rare. Only 1% of land on the planet is serpentine, rocks derived from the mantle. North America, we have a little bit more. There's about 2% of North America is serpentine rocks. Where you find it is where there's current plate interactions, subduction zones, or where there historically were, and now there's no longer plate interactions. And the environment really is the subduction zones. And that's where the oceanic plate, which is heavy and dense, comes and interacts with the continent, which is granitic and light and bigger, and subducts underneath. Exactly the environment we have here today. And that subduction results in things like the Cascade volcanoes that we have. When you get serpentine, a section of that oceanic crust, for whatever reason, has been jammed and stuck and moved up onto the surface of the earth. It's often associated with island arcs. So imagine off the coast, the Pacific Ocean, if we had some Indonesias moving towards us, those islands, towards the continent. They jam in that subduction zone, and parts of those islands, exotic terrain, become part of North America, including a chunk of the oceanic crust. It's crazy. It's a miracle. And that sequence of oceanic crust, and by the way, this is my pet peeve, and is sometimes people talk about serpentine and they call it ocean floor. That's not quite right. So this is a sequence of oceanic crust. At the top, you have the sediments that come down, the little silica creatures turn into chert, limestone. There's mudstones. That's the surface. Next layer, you often have pillow basalt. Some of you might have seen beautiful videos of them being created off the coast of Hawaii when the lavas come and hit the water. Below that are sheeted dikes, gabbro, and those actually represent the pipes at spreading centers where new crust is being made. And below that, a little bit more gabbro, and then lots of mantle rock. So when we have mantle rocks on the surface of the earth, they're originating from 3 or 7 or 10 kilometers deep in the earth and are at the top. It's incredible. Oh, yeah, keep pulling this up. So the challenge for plants is that these are rocks that are alien essentially to the surface of the earth. And in many ways, you can think about it as junk food. Serpentine soils derived from serpentine rocks are very low in plant nutrients, generally. There's a few places where they have more nutrients. They're low in nitrogen and phosphorus and potassium, and especially calcium. And the calcium-magnesium ratio is particularly not great for most of the plants on the surface of the earth. And then you add that they're rich in heavy metals like cobalt, and especially nickel. Nickel is a challenge for plants. And often where we have serpentine soils, you have plants you find nowhere else in the world who are amazing, and they can grow and thrive and reproduce and show us beautiful flowers on these unusual kooky soils, including the wonderful Siskiyou. How many has seen this wonderful plant in the Illinois Valley? Yeah. Okay, so here are our rocks. I bring them. I have them in my front yard. The top rock is an example of peridotite. It's got a red weathered rind. It's got knobby bits, which are pyroxene minerals. You crack it open though, and they often are greenish to dark colored from the olivine minerals. That is a mantle rock that's relatively unaltered. Most of the mantle rocks that come to the surface of the earth are altered or slightly metamorphized. Serpentine or serpentinite, though, has gone on a crazy journey, and it looks totally different. They're lustrous and variable and green and blue and have different mineral associations and are just dreamy. Have any of you been at a rock outcrop of serpentine and just like, this fabulous? So now we're moving into some of the plants of $8 Mountain. And there's many different habitats, but I roughly have broken it up into fens, which are a kind of wetland. And the kind of wetlands at $8 Mountain are spring fed. The water moves through. They're alkaline. They're not acidic, and they don't have sphagnum moss like bogs do. And the fens and wetlands support many, many amazing plants, including some that are quite rare. The classic iconic one is Darlingtonia californica, cobra lily. They're like sentient creatures, a whole herd of them in a field. The picture on the left is the fruit of the flower, which I think are stunning. In the middle are the really almost like alien flowers of cobra lily. On the right are the modified leaves that form the pitchers. And the pitchers often get a lot of attention, but those flowers and fruits are really special. Many of you have heard the story. I'll try to tell it really quick. How to eat a bug if you're a cobra lily. First, you smell good to the bugs. They come in towards the mustache, right? They come into the hole. The windows don't open, and the bugs try to get out of the windows at the top and get tired. The downward pointing hairs in the tube encourage them to go down. And cobra lily plants at the bottom have water, but it's moderated. It's not passive amount of water. And there's a bacteria in there that reduces the surface tension. So the insects don't fall on the surface tension. They just die quickly, which is nice, I think, maybe. And inside of there are 7 obligate organisms, mites and midges. That is where they live. And they eat the bugs that are dead, and then they poop, and that helps feed the cobra lilies. More recently, an enzyme has been found that also helps digest the bugs. But that's not the only carnivore in the fins. We have the pings, common butterwort, which is our featured shirt. We probably don't have them today, right? Darlene made this wonderful illustration for our shirts. And they're curious little plants, pretty small, usually growing next to little seeps or little intermittent streams in more bare areas, and they have buttery yellow leaves. And those leaves are tricky. They're sticky, and they have enzymes that digest small insects. What's interesting about pings, though, they're the only group known that not only do they digest animal protein, they digest plant material like pollen. So they take it all. And another one, and this is great because many of our plants on the world have sticky stems. Why do they have them? All kinds of theories. Well, at least in this case for sticky triantha, in 2021, researchers discovered there's an enzyme in those sticky stems that digests insects, little small ones. And so many other sticky stem plants may also digest insects. We'll see. Who knows? Don't know. I think the tricky thing is if you're a carnivorous plant, you want to fortify your diet, especially if you live in these serpentine wetlands. There's not a lot of nitrogen, but you also don't want to digest your pollinators. So that would be a very interesting area of research. I do think most of the pollinators of these plants tend to be bigger, and the insects they digest tend to be smaller. This is the first and only known sticky stem plant carnivore. Most of the other carnivores on the planet use modified leaves. But there's more wonderful plants. So this is Waldo gentian. And the great gift of gentians is they bloom in late summer, sometimes into early fall, and just steal your heart with their vibrant colors. Waldo gentian grows in cobra lily fins and is rare. Oregon Biodiversity Information Center manages one of the rare lists, and it's like list 1 to list 4. List 1 means that this is a plant that is threatened by extinction or extirpation in Oregon. This species is also a candidate for listing under the state of Oregon. It's beautiful. How many of you go late summer to look for gentians? When that's blooming, there's a few other plants in the fins that are blooming, like Parnassians and other beautiful things. Well, here's another very rare plant, only known in the Illinois Valley in fins. It's called large flowered rush lily. There's actually a purple variety that I've seen just in the southern Illinois Valley. I haven't seen on $8 Mountain. Has anyone seen the purple variety? It's really stunning. It's also Orbic List 1 and is listed as threatened in the state of Oregon. I was at $8 Mountain Preserve with Oregon Bee Atlas last spring, and this was in bloom. And when this is in bloom, this is a plant that's like yay tall. Zoomers can't see me, but like, above my waist sometimes. And there tends to be a bunch of them. And it was being mobbed by big, shiny carpenter bees. And the next week I was out there on $8 Mountain, it was being mobbed by feral honeybees. Very interesting. A lot of these rare plants, we still don't understand their favorite pollinators. By the way, this one and 4 others, including the gentian, are protected in a conservation agreement by agencies, BLM, Forest Service. And it's my understanding it was done in lieu of listing them under the Endangered Species Act. So the federal government needs to protect habitat for these species. This little white violet, the Western bog violet, also is a specialist on the Darlingtonian fins in our region. And it's Orbic List 1, a federal species of concern, and a candidate for state listing. I do want to mention the photographers on these photos. Keir Morse was a student at SOU. He did an amazing flora at Siskiyou Field Institute. I actually have a copy of that if anybody's interested. It's a really great reference. He's moved on. Now he's got a PhD in California. And then Norm Jensen was a beautiful man, active volunteer with the Native Plant Society. He was a webmaster. He took just luscious photos, and he has since passed. But his photos are on the Oregon Flora website all over the place. I mean, his photos. Okay, more special plants. Here's another very rare plant associated with the fins. It's called Oregon willow herb. It's easy to miss. It blooms late, and there's usually only 1 or 2 of them. It doesn't grow in big populations. find it in August and even in September in the fens. And what, the willow herbs are a little tricky. This one, what you look for is the stigma is four-parted and sticks out. Also look that it's growing in a very wet place and that it has opposite leaves. This is a federal species of concern, also Orbic list 1. Very rare plant, very small populations, and very, very lovely. And this one, California lady slippers. There can be big patches of it on $8 Mountain. It's Orbic list 4. I was talking to a charming woman last year, and she asked me about the plant. What was it? The one that had the toilet seat plant. And now I've ruined it for you too. Here's our beautiful toilet seat plant. And then just glorious plants associated with these fens, the Vollmer's lily, bright orange to red, big, tall, and showy. It's usually blooming in the fens in June. By the way, the fens, from March into September have glorious flowers blooming in them. Good to visit them anytime. Other special plants that you find in the fens are bog asphodel, this narthecium. You'll also find in wet meadows at high elevations too, on and off serpentine. There's a really nice population in Grayback Mountain. Waxy coneflower. And what about this? Look at this one, a pink paintbrush. This is siskiyou paintbrush, and it's endemic to the clan of siskiyous on serpentine. And this one, like the willow herb, the Oregon willow herb, just find one flower here and one flower there. And when I notice them, I feel like I have truly won the lottery. Who here has met this plant before? We won the lottery. And you cannot talk about these fens without at least one slide mentioning the grasses and sedges. One of my favorite things about serpentine landscapes is the native grasses and the perennial bunch grasses. They're still there. Most of our low elevation areas, our oak woodlands, our meadows, they're mostly been converted to non-native annual grasses. It's just a delight to see them. But a showstopper is tufted hairgrass, Dischampsia cespitosa. It's a dominant in the fens, and it's about this tall, big and puffy. And where the fens are extra wet, you have less of this grass and more sedges. On the edges, you have California oak grass, which is also a very attractive grass. And then the fens themselves have really neat sedges, including this one, the star sedge, which I think is relatively easy to identify. The peringia, the fruits look like little stars. Okay, now we're moving to the Jeffrey pine savanna, another major habitat on $8 Mountain. So the main trees, Jeffrey pine, and often there's some cedar and sugar pine, and sometimes white pine, with various degrees of shrubs. White-leaf manzanita is super common, but also buckbrush and other shrubs. And it can be really variable. Some places are really dry and rocky, and other places are vermily moist. And those support different plants, the rocky spots versus the vermily moist. And lots of great bunch grasses, which this photo doesn't demonstrate. So this was an interesting find. So Cooksalmation is a federally endangered plant, only known in Jackson and Josephine County. It lives in two kind of distinct places. The Agate Desert, vernal pool, mounded prairie. You have counted them at Agate Desert Preserve. And it grows on the edges of these vernal pools. And in Jackson County, it's not doing very well, except for a few properties that are intensively managed, usually involving prescribed fire. And then also the Illinois Valley, where it grows on vernal soils, grassy soils on the valley floor, sometimes with serpentine influence, sometimes not. Most of the populations are in the southern Illinois Valley, but a while ago, before this was, Copper Lily Springs was transferred to us by an angel an owner who transferred it to us, her friend, Kathy Meckling, amazing naturalist, went out there the day after she had seen Cook's Lomatium in the Southern Illinois Valley. And she texted me and she's like, hey, I found Cook's Lomatium. I'm like, nah. It's a technical group, these Lomatiums. And I went out there and she did. And later we found many more populations. So there's a little under 1,000 at Cobra Lily Springs off of $8 Mountain Road. This one does bloom a little early. So maybe it's been missed. Maybe it's on other places on $8 Mountain and it is federally endangered. Technical group, tricky to ID, lovely. One thing is that the petals are very pale, and then you look underneath the heads of flowers, and those bracts are kind of narrow. They don't overlap like a more common biscuit root or lomatium. And then there's this one. This one makes me so happy. Howe's Mariposa lily, named after T.J. Howe, the first pioneer botanist of Oregon, and who also described them. These are also tall Mariposa lilies. They bloom kind of late in June and even into July. They're about knee high, lovely when they sway around, kind of look like ghosts in the savanna. And they are state listed and also Orbic List 1 and in Oregon threatened. They live in the Illinois Valley on serpentine that hasn't been developed. Opposite leaf, Louisia. This one likes vernal areas and succulent leaves, which I don't have a good picture of, but really showy flower. This is Orbic List 4. And I mean, they just go on and on. But wallow buckwheat is a very curious buckwheat. It blooms really late. The petals are almost scariest, like onion skin, and kind of likes more rocky, dry soils and kind of thick leaves. Other rare plants of the Jeffrey pine are silky balsam roots and Oregon bleeding heart. And this is a bleeding heart, but the flowers are more white and it's a serpentine specialist. The Oregon bleeding heart you'll often find growing along intermittent streams or seeps that dry up. Just gorgeous. These are just fabulous little jewels, and they are a natural heritage of this region, our specialty, and we should be so proud to have them as neighbors. Other plants, wallow rock cress, it's a really neat rock cress with very kind of bright purple flowers, which contrasts really nice to the red rocks. And the leaves help you because the Arabis or the rock cress group is a little hard sometimes. You look at the leaves and they have hairs, and at the base of the hairs, there's little warty bits. And they're nice to pet. I like to pet them. And then serpentine butterweed, which has a very egg yolky color, is endemic to the Clamacyscius. And yet another one. Here is a serpentine endemic that grows in more rocky areas on Jeffrey pine woodlands. And often it has a real red-orange look to it. These photos are by Keir, and these are from Siskiyou Field Institute. Not a rare plant, but a Clamacysciu endemic of serpentine is the sweet, adorable Ceanothus. It sprawls along the ground. It's itty bitty. The base of the leaves have 3 little teeth. I want this as a garden plant. Someone please propagate it for me. Matt. And then look at the fruits. They're like cute little red apples. It's just a perfect little plant, and it grows in the rocky areas. These flowers aren't fully open, but they're so cute. And this stunner. This grows in roadsides. It likes a little bit of disturbance, a bit of a pioneer species. The color is like no other plant I've ever seen. Bolander's lily. And it can be a short little thing, but it also can be knee high. Some of the plants in the Jeffrey pine savannas hyperaccumulate nickel. So most plants, the way they deal with toxic nickel is they exclude them. Like, you cannot enter, you shall not pass through the roots. But a few of our plants in Western North America hyperaccumulated in part of the plant body that is not that important. So not involved with reproduction or with photosynthesis. So Siskiyou pennycrest is one of those plants. Really early bloomer in March, April. Happy little plant. Up to 3% of its dried weight can be nickel. It really hyperaccumulates it. And cuneate violet is also another one. I don't think a lot of plants have been tested in North America, but there's some places in Europe, there's quite a lot of nickel hyperaccumulators. And New Caledonia, the island system, has more nickel hyperaccumulators than any place in the world. It also has lots of nickel and lots of nickel mining and no environmental and labor laws. But I still would love to go to New Caledonia and do special plants. Doesn't want to go. Now we're gone. And ferns. This Rockland fern with a beautiful black stipe or stem is really important in indigenous basketry. Serpentine fern. It is much beloved and beautiful. And again, those green frondy bits next to the red rocks are just stunning. Has anyone seen any basketry with this woven in? They're really incredible. Okay, now onto another habitat, a different kind of wetland that's very shrubby, hard to walk around. Along the streams and in openings in the shrubs, you will find all of those fin specialists and the rare species and cobra lily and gentian. This is actually just taken recently, and the azalea buds are just getting going. But speaking of azalea tends to be the dominant in these shrublands. And I found this great quote by Quetzal Levine, who does garden stuff on JPR. And it's an old article in the Oregonian. And this is what she said about Western azalea. Close your eyes, bow your head, and descend face first into the flowers. Then too, you will know botanic awe. They smell really good. They're intoxicating when there's a bunch of them in bloom. This is an interesting plant. Art Kuckeberg, who's kind of the grandfather of serpentine ecology, he called a group of plants that you can find on serpentine and off serpentine, Bondebag, the soil wanderers. However, many of these soil wanderers have different races on serpentine. So the azaleas that grow on serpentine in our region are more tolerant in alkaline soil conditions than the ones, say, we see in other places in the coast mountains. Other shrubs include coffeeberry. Later, those flowers will turn into nice little red berries that apparently are a coffee substitute. Anyone here try coffeeberry coffee? Okay. And then the yummy smelling Oregon myrtle. You know, in California, you can call it California myrtle, but I call it Oregon myrtle. There are so many other plants, but I also wanted us to go home tonight. Many special plants of $8 Mountain and serpentine soils in the Illinois Valley. But I wanted to transition. It's not just the plants, it's the wildlife. And some of the creatures are pretty rare. So black petal-tailed dragonfly is a special status dragonfly, and it's a fin specialist. And they're just outstandingly magnificent dragonflies, big ones. Here it's visiting actually a sticky triantha. You can almost see the bugs that they're catching on the stem. The butterfly, Siskiyou coronis butterfly, thank you, Linda, for your photograph. Linda actually called me today and wanted me to emphasize how special this butterfly is. Its special status, it was recently described. The host plant is Hall's violet, primarily, but also cuneate violet. And it is threatened by development and extinction. And it needs the fins. We need the fins for this butterfly. The serpentine is a great place to see reptiles and amphibians, which have been disappearing all over. And one part reason I think you see a lot of them is there's more bare ground, less non-native grasses. At least with $8 Mountain, it's not highly fragmented. It's a great place to see western toads. Almost every time I go, I see garter snakes and racers. It's a place where I feel better because I hate that I walk around other regions, other places, other habitats, and I rarely see amphibians and reptiles other than fence lizards. There's many conservation threats to serpentine landscapes. For whatever reason, off-road vehicle folks are really attracted to those vernal meadows. And they drive around in them. Mining, and we'll talk about a little bit more. Oregon land use. You know, in the 1970s, Oregon decided it wanted to protect our farmland and forest land and had special, like, world famous laws to protect farmland and forests from conversion to other uses. And compared to surrounding states that don't have that protection, we have protected much, but not all, of our farmland and forests. However, land use zoning for serpentine, at least in Josephine County, does not promote conservation at all. You can subdivide serpentine zoning in 5-acre lots, right? It's not valued. Obviously, people need places to live, but serpentine, the way it's zoned, promotes development. Climate change is a big one. We're going to dive into mining threats. This map is by K.S. Wild, who, with Friends of Kalamiopsis and Kalamiopsis Audubon and the Smith River Alliance and other groups, are leading the information gathering and the fight about the growing mining threat. Why is there a growing mining threat? Well, because in part of climate change. How many of you have electric cars or hybrids? A few. It's few people in the audience. I bet some of the Zoomers do too. Those batteries need all kinds of minerals, including nickel. So the growing demand for nickel is growing worldwide. And a Canadian company called Homeland Nickel has been buying up mining claims in Southwest Oregon. It's interesting that they particularly focus on Southwest Oregon versus Northwest California, which also has serpentine and nickel. I listened to an interview on a mining show that's on YouTube. You can find it. And the CEO said that the reason Southwest Oregon was better is it's easier to work in the state of Oregon than California. And something else that I didn't fully understand, but he said the ownership is less splintered. And they're talking about federal ownership. Here is a map showing places where Homeland Nickel has been buying up claims or old claims. Red Flat, and that is the headwaters of Hunter Creek and Pistol River. Iron Mountain. Number 4 is $8 Mountain. Nearby is Woodcock Mountain. Nearby is Rough and Ruddy Creek, a special landscape. There are stories and claims that they've bought up other claims in other places like Josephine Creek, which has very dense populations of some of these fens. It seems like their particular focus right now is Red Flat and the Cleopatra mine near the California border. But currently those places have administrative exemptions from mining. And $8 Mountain is in their sights too. Here's a map of $8 Mountain done by the state geologic organization, Dogami. Most of $8 Mountain is actually relatively unaltered peridotite or mantle rock. There's some serpentine. There's also some of those oceanic pelagic sediments. But you see those black parts? Those are nickel laterites, and those are old weathered serpentine soils that have nickel in them. And those are the targets for mining. And most of the nickel on the planet comes from nickel laterites. And that's where the new claims are on $8 Mountain. They currently have 2,278 acres under mining claims the last couple years on the botanical area and the ACEC. I might add that $8 Mountain in the state of Oregon is listed as a register of natural heritage resources. So if mining can happen on $8 Mountain, which has long been recognized by ecologists and botanists as very special, with very rare plants, with botanical areas, all of these different designations, it can happen anywhere. Right? We need nickel. we need to have less diesel and gasoline powered cars, but not $8 Mountain in my book. So here's a lot of text. Oh my goodness, maybe the Zoomers can read it. Just looking at some of the press releases. If you're curious, just go to Homeland Nickel and read their press releases. That's one way you find out what's going on. They recently made a deal with an American company called Patriot, to further mining in Southwest Oregon. They had an announcement this summer that they did soil tests on $8 Mountain, and some of the nickel content was up to 2.1%. The one commercial mine of nickel in Oregon, Nickel Mountain outside of Riddle, had 1.5% nickel content on average. So in the press release,
some of the pits, I worked at Ann.
can't wait to talk to you more about that. Yeah, there was more.
Some of the lower pits are just around 2, and they went up to 3.5%.
Wow. Okay, so there was a wide range.
And just an anecdotal thing. Hannah Nickel closed in 1982 or 83, but they had a short period after that where they were Glenbrook Nickel, and they would transport nickel from New Caledonia to Coos Bay, drive it to Riddle and smelt it.
Yeah.
So
I was reading that there were trams.
What's that?
There were trams.
There was a.
Did you ride the trams?
No, people didn't ride the tram. They had a screening plant that dumped the ore into the tram, and the tram ran the nickel down the mountain and stacked it to sort it for smelting. And they had big trucks and dead pits out at the top of the mountain, which is where all the nickel was.
Yeah.
What decades?
That was decades. Yeah, they ran from the 40s to the early 80s.
It's my understanding that it was recognized as a source of nickel even in the 1800s,
Yeah.
but that it wasn't really until the Korean War in the 1950s that the United States actually helped subsidize because they needed nickel for the airplanes.
It was a national security thing because nickel was classified as a strategic metal. So
By the way, Zoomers, we have someone in the audience who worked for Hannah, the company. What was Hannah's name?
Hannah Nickel.
Hannah Nickel.
Yeah.
Was it the 80s that you worked there?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I worked there in the late 70s.
Yeah. I read some testimonials that, it was a great place to work to get money to go to college.
Yeah.
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 And there's a lot of shoveling.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It just one other. So the person who was head of Glenbrook Nickel, he was talking to me, and he said, I was walking on the beach in New Caledonia, and they asked me what our nickel content was. And they were just walking on the beach, and the content of that beach was twice what the nickel over the river was.
Yeah. It's a major source of
New
nickel.
Caledonia is
Yeah.
nickel.
I'd love to walk on a beach in New Caledonia. Thank you for that. Let me see, what else did I want to pull from this? There have been some threats that $8 Mountain might be the next place for nickel mining because there's issues with the withdrawal. In the video where I listened to Steve Balch, the CEO, he said $8 Mountain, visible nickel laterite is everywhere on the surface. And at one point he did say this, which didn't ring true to me. And some of this is paraphrased. It's not exact quote. I tried. No, $8 Mountain, nobody lives there. People hike through the area. There's no indigenous people, no endangered species. There's some rare plants, but we'll stay away from it. It would be true that if you mined $8 Mountain, it would be hard to avoid the rare plants. And we'll talk here. I'll just go to the next slide. By the way, their mining claims in Southwest Oregon are over 15,000 acres, recent mining claims in our region. Here is a picture from 2011 of Google Earth of Nickel Mountain, and sort of an overview of what we just heard about the one kind of commercial nickel mine in the United States. The Glenbrook Nickel Smelter is on the Superfund website. And so, but they wrote that it doesn't need any more work. So, there, I can't totally verify that it was an actual Superfund site.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Kristi, Sarah said that they can hear in the Zoom pretty well. I think.
Oh, good. Thank you. I'm glad to hear that. Well, that's fabulous. $8 Mountain is a special place with incredible plants. It's next to the wild and scenic Illinois River. These serpentine mountain rock areas, those rocks have gone through they're beat up from coming all the way from the mantle. So they tend to have tremendous water resources. There's springs and seeps. There's water everywhere, especially in the spring. It's a special place. Probably not a place for mining, right? I could see pragmatic groups of people getting together and finding some places maybe in the Klamath-Siskiyous where we could agree to nickel mining that could be profitable. I don't know. We do need more nickel. And I don't want it all to come from the Philippines and Cuba and New Caledonia. I don't want it to come from $8 Mountain or the botanical areas of our region. But anyway, here's some actions. DEQ is in the process for designating outstanding resource waters for the Illinois River and Rough and Ready Creek. Public comment might be in April. So please stand by partners like KS Wild, Friends of the Kalmiopsis, Kalmiopsis Audubon, Siskiyou Chapter Native Plant Society, and Southern Oregon Land Conservancy. We would like to hear from you if you support the conservation of $8 Mountain and not having nickel mining, as well as those other amazing landscapes. Tell your friends, contact your representatives. Visit $8 Mountain. KS Well will have a field trip out there this spring. Southern Oregon Land Conservancy will have a few. And the federal lands, you can just wander at your own. The great thing is there's a wonderful place, interpretive driving trail, the TJ Howe Botanical Drive along $8 Mountain Road. If you're going down Highway 199 to go to the Redwoods, or if you're going to the coast, stop near Selma, go down $8 Mountain Road, couple miles down, you'll find these great interpretive signs about this 7.5-mile roadway interpretive tour of the sites. And includes stopping at the boardwalk at the Hal Fen at the base of $8 Mountain, which has many of these plants I've talked about on BLM land. Here's a beautiful picture of $8 Mountain by Barbara, who has been a big, fierce advocate for the Illinois Valley and $8 Mountain. I am done. So I will take any questions or comments, if there are any.
Do you have any questions in the room?
There are questions on Zoom.
Rachel, did you read those out?
Let's see, so some comments, thanks for the presentation. Jennifer says, can you put together a petition we can sign, Kristi?
Yeah, especially when there's an action oriented. Absolutely, we can put together petitions and sample letters to our representatives. Yes, Sarah.
I'm just
Yeah.
wondering, there was many times there were attempts to open those minings. It didn't work in the past, right?
Yeah.
What stopped them in the past and is it because of administration much easier now?
Yes. So the question is, why is now different versus like the 1990s? There was proposed nickel mining on $8 Mountain and other locations. And thanks to, in part, the botanical areas and the ACECs and tremendous community outrage, it didn't happen. But we're in a different, darker climate now, right? Even Endangered Species Act, the Clean Water Act, all of those, there's interest with the current administration of eroding them and having less public review. The Trump administration did sign an executive order asking the Forest Service and BLM and other agencies to make mining much more easier and less hard. less concern about regulations for clean water and rare plants. And in addition, the growing desire for nickel because of green batteries. And we need more green batteries. We need less gas guzzling out there. But that's part of the reason. And a lot of us are really sick to our stomachs and concerned. But our hope is once again, we can all come together and say, no, not here. Rachel.
One of the good things, if you're an active member of the Native Plant Society, there's a way that you can sign up for conservation alert. And if, depending on who's leading the conservation chair and how much bandwidth they have, they can send out calls to action like that, or you can write a letter kind of thing. So you sign up for those conservation alerts, that can be one thing here.
Yes.
This, to add insult to injury, it's worth mentioning that the what we as a government or a people get from the development of mining resources in public land is zero. Because the royalties are essentially zero. They pay next to zero to file claims. This is because of Congress's action many years ago under the influence of the mining industry, of course. So, well, often we just went up with Superfund sites. So
We have to help clean those up with our taxpayer money. Yeah.
Burning liabilities.
Just there's a Canadian company opened up Formosa mine. It's on a different mountain close to Riddle. It was one of the original Superfund cleanup sites. Yeah, it was a Canadian company. They didn't make any money. They lost their shirt, and then we're this mess of slag and heavy metal such thing by Riddle. It's pretty scary when you consider the similarities to what happened under Reagan and under Trump about allowing foreign interests to mine. It can be scary and leaving a mess for future taxpayers to clean up.
Rachel?
Another question from the Zoom: are tribes involved connected with $8 Mountain with all the water, and another one with all the waterways in the area? Will the river become contaminated?
Our tribes are involved and interested, yes, and most certainly the Confederated Tribes of the Grand Round and Confederated Tribes of Siletz and Cow Creek, all want to see $8 Mountain protected, is my understanding. Obviously, I can't speak for Indigenous people, but it's my understanding. And I expect that there'll be comments on this. Will mining, the kind of mining for nickel that is developed is their open pit mining. There's on-site development in sag ponds, acid leach. It can be hydrochloric acid or sulfuric, because usually the price of moving the material is too expensive. So often, except for when you get rocks from New Caledonia, the smelter is right there on site too. And that leaves behind big piles of rock. The surface is bulldozed, and there can be contamination of water. And again, $8 Mountain is got springs and seeps all over. So that would be a big concern. And, if you remember that map of ownership, the base of $8 Mountain on the east side and the southern side, those are private landowners who live there. And many of them get their water from $8 Mountain, if not all of them, from water rights. So that is a huge concern. And again, those waters drain into our wild and scenic turquoise blue Illinois River. Any other questions? Down in the back.
Yeah, is there any ponds on $8 Mountain?
There are some small little very small little ponds that I know of. And I know that in some of the lower elevations, some people's water rights are associated with ponds too. But I wouldn't say there's particularly big ponds, but there are really large springs that gush out of the mountain and lots of seeps and intermittent streams. Other questions? Some of you look really sleepy. Well, thank you, everyone. Thank you, Siskiyou Chapter Native Plant Society. And please stay tuned and figure out how we can protect the plants and the wildlife and the water resources on $8 Mountain and other serpentine landscapes. Thank you.
Kristi, do you want to mention you brought some things, I think?
Yeah, we have some flower stickers. There's a sign up if you'd like to get Southern Oregon Land Conservancy's e-news, which will announce hikes to $8 Mountain and other partner stuff. There's my card if you have any questions. And do we have anything else for the meeting, Matt?
No, that's good. That's
Okay.
our business on the front end. So.
Great. Well, thank you for joining us all on Zoom and have a good evening.
Hi, Kristi. So this Sea has a new waterfall site near the coast and valley.